Few updates. A bit of sad information first. We lost another parent to COVID this past week, so I thought it would be helpful to start again with a moment of silence. The learner was also in the hospital. They are out now and are improving, but very difficult, very difficult time. So let's just take a minute and just send some love or prayers to the people that have lost people right now to COVID. It's easy to think about what our needs are right now and just to take just a minute. So I think a bit of good news is the vaccines are becoming more prevalent around the country. Unfortunately, we're still not vaccinating teachers in Indiana. Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois is, but Indiana has not created that yet. But also, I think that if you look at the numbers for Indiana, there is a down slope now, and the people that are mostly in the hospitals, not all, but many, are a part of this 70 up, 65 and up amount of people, and we can't be begrudged for that because we want to help those people that are at the most need first too. India is receiving about 90,000 vaccinations a week right now. So they just started 65 and over today. They're still healthcare workers. They're also trying to get scheduled. We are so appreciative that families, some of you on the call, one of you on the call actually, has given us information about what's happening out in the community and things that have come up. So this family member let us know that they were looking for volunteers locally. And so if people went and volunteered for a set amount of hours, they would be able to get the vaccine as part of that volunteering. So we have about a dozen of our staff doing that right now. So we're finding unique ways for people to feel really safe. So I think that's terrific. So please keep sharing what you see out in the community. We'd love to be a part of that. As you've heard, the variants specifically in the UK and South Africa are showing that at least one of the vaccines will probably need a booster shot. So not sure what that will do moving forward, but it's good that people are, and these vaccine companies are really looking out for what's coming next and trying to stay ahead of that. As far as an update with our communities, I'm going to share my screen with you a minute. This is kind of an interesting, sorry. Okay, it's coming. So do you see that right now? So if you haven't seen this before, these are the CDC indicators and thresholds for risk of introduction and transmission in schools. And so I started to take a deep dive on this document this past week. It was presented in some draft form back in September, and then it was resubmitted again for use in December. So I started asking our people locally and at the state level, like, is there some place I can get this information, straight up? And there is not. But I was able to put together a few things because I thought it was pretty interesting. But we don't, I had to extrapolate it mostly from this document. So this is the positivity in the state. And so here we are as Floyd. For unique individuals, we're at 18%, and we're at 22% in Clark. So we have about half of our families come from Clark, and about half come from Floyd. And then we have about 3% of our families that come from Harrison County, which is a little bit of a hot spot right now. They're at 26%. So most of our families come from one of these three communities here. When you go down here, you'll see the positive cases statewide are in the downward slope, which is fantastic. And these numbers were at late 20s and early 30% a couple of weeks ago. So that's terrific. When you look back at this, the CDC components there, there. So the first one is number of cases per 100,000 persons within the last 14 days. So both Clark and Floyd had over 800 cases per 100,000 over the last 14 days. So this says if you're over 200 cases per 100,000, you're at the highest risk of transmission at schools. We're still at 800,000 in either Clark or Floyd. So we're way above where this is. We're in this red category. The next one is percentage of tests that are positive during the last 14 days. And so in both Clark and Floyd, we were at either 12 or 13%, which is above this number here for higher transmission in schools. So these are the three core indicators. We're at the highest risk on the first two. The second one is about key mitigation. So if you read over these components, CM is doing all of those components. So I would say that we're probably in the lowest risk transmission in this first column here. And then there's these secondary components too, which, it takes a little bit to find out, like in both Clark and Floyd, there's about 13% ICU beds available, et cetera. So that kind of goes back and forth on the secondary indicators. But I thought that was important just to show that and know that part as well. So our percent of positivity in children has risen to almost 14%. In both Floyd and Clark. Clark's a little bit more. They're at about 14.5%. So that number's higher, which we don't like to hear. It doesn't mean that more children are being hospitalized. Those numbers are not clear, but I think that's important. Overall, Floyd and Clark County cases have been dropping. So again, I think that's good news. Of course, we don't know what lies ahead, and we do remain open and hopeful that shots in arms will keep increasing in our community. When COVID cases are high in our community and our cases are still high, states that are low cases are like 5% and 6%. So we are still high. So we can't get comfortable that our numbers are down and that everything's perfect again. We know that we knew that we had this conversation in January that we were going to have cases in our building because the infection rate in our community is too high, and that is exactly what happened. And so we had, I think, 4 infections within those first 3 days of being open, and we shut everything down for a while. And mostly, lots of conversations with staff and how they're feeling. And I really contend that, the people that are working with the children, every single day are the ones that really get to make that decision. And so, a couple of levels went back and forth and finally said, like, we just feel like we just can't do this right now. And so, understandable. And so, I still think, the infection rate is high. And when it's high, you're going to get cases in the building. The good news is, to our knowledge, we did not have any transmission of infection, even with the positives. So what you worry about, and I know some of you have probably read some of the articles recently, like in I think it was rural Wisconsin, about transmissions are low. And it's because schools are working really hard to do that. We, I think, have done above and beyond that. Where kids don't even move throughout the building. They come in the same door, they go out the same door. And so that, I think, really, really helps. So that's a positive. But I think what sometimes people don't realize is that when you have a positive case in a studio, and we anticipate that maybe the majority of those kids or too many of those kids were potential close contacts. And oftentimes the teachers are close contacts, even though we try to not be, they're going to be personable with these young people because that's why they're here. And so when you have a studio then that has to close, and then you might have 2 or 3 children that have parents that are working in the school, that now they have to go home because they're a household member. And all of a sudden you have 7 studios affected by this one studio being closed. So I know sometimes people had asked that, like, I don't understand. Why couldn't we stay open? And I get it. A lot of schools are still having subs come in, or they're putting somebody that from the music room into the science room to cover the class. And if we can't do this well, we will not be on campus. That is just the way it's going to be. And when we can do it well, we will be on campus. And so the committee met last week, and we discussed a lot of this information and talked about where the rates were And we do want to start an opening campus process again. So let me go over what that's going to look like. So the nursery will open starting on February 8th for all families. So that's the infant toddler program. They'll open on February 8th, which is a week from today, for all families. Early ed will open for FSP and hybrid families starting on February 10th. So PPC days are the 8th and the 9th. So schools closed automatically for that as far as on campus. And then they'll be able to come on campus starting on February 10th for early ed, FSP, and hybrid families. Elementary and islands, so the 6 to 14 age level, will be open for FSP families starting on February 10th. So February 10th also opens to elementary and islands. So those are the families for 6 to 14. And then the Woods teens, 14 to 18-year-olds, high school age level, will be open only on an invitation basis. There are very few young people that are signed up for FSP at that level, and those staff members know those families, situations, and kids, teens well. So they will contact you if your teen will be coming on campus. So if you don't hear anything from a Woods teacher advisor, you'll know that your teen at that Woods level, at high school age level, will not be coming on campus. Okay, I know that was a whole lot. I'm going to ask Prerna to go ahead and open up the chat, and then I'm going to give you a few reminders while we're waiting for some questions to come in. I want to take this opportunity to remind everybody about what on campus looks like. So if your kiddo has any symptoms at all, please do not send them on campus. If other people in your household have symptoms, do not send them on campus. If other people in your household are getting tested because they could potentially be a close contact, please do not send them on campus. Let them stay home until you're sure, because when there's a high infection rate, sometimes you don't know. And we really appreciate you being prudent and diligent in that process, then being like, I got to get them to school. Like, we trust you. You make sure that everything feels okay. We did have several situations in January where people came on campus where someone was waiting for a test result or someone in their household was ill. And so I just want to remind you, we are not judging you. We trust you, and we'd rather you keep them at home, because that stops all the cards from falling, because if someone does come and now somebody else is positive in their household, but they were here, then we have to do contact tracing, because now they've also been a close contact. All right. Questions, comments, thoughts? I think Heather and Prerna are going to be working the comments.
We don't have any yet. The chat is open in case anybody didn't see that.
So I must have made it so clear.
I was going to say, Barbara, I think you just did an excellent job. It's got everybody, their brains working right now.
Barbara, we have a question about when is hybrid opening for the elementary and islands programs?
Yeah, it's a good question. And what I can tell you right now is that, we will schedule another call in a couple of weeks and update from there. But we can know that for the first couple of weeks that we go back on campus with FSP, we're just going to start with that group for that age level.
And another question, FSP is returning every day beginning the 10th, correct?
That's right. For those age levels that we discussed.
Yes.
There's a question that said, is it daily or a couple days a week again? So, if your learner is in FSP, I think that applies for an everyday schedule. But if it's hybrid, and if your learner is not earlier, then you'll just have to wait to see the family video call, the next one.
Also a question about, what are the hours for coming to school? Is that the same as before school closed?
Same as we did in the fall. we're going right back into the mode of where we were in August.
Will extended learning be open?
If you're identified and enrolled in extended learning, then it will be open on the date that your level starts. So that would be the 10th for those families that are going to be back on campus.
I think this is a question. My son has been hybrid, so only 2 days per week going forward. For the early ed program, is there any sort of alternating Wednesday happening?
So Whitney, I think your kiddo has been FSP. So you can verify that with Prana after this call. But at this point, there's no plan for alternating. We'll have that conversation again once we decide about hybrid kids coming back throughout the building. So for right now, there will not be any rotating of Wednesdays. So Wednesdays will just stay for FSP children only in early ed.
And then is there any opportunity to limit the impact of a single household across multiple studios that are the same level?
Wow, that was an algorithm I didn't follow.
I'm having trouble with that one too. Kristen, would you like to elaborate a little bit on that? Like putting learners who are siblings in the same studio. I see. Wondering if there are any changes we might make so that if there are symptoms or cases in the same family, that it's not affecting multiple studios, I think.
So Heather, are you suggesting that that's asking if we're moving kids from separate studios into the same studio?
Yeah, I think that Kristen's just wondering, is there a way to rearrange so that families stay together, so that if, it's not impacting as many studios if somebody gets sick or has a positive test. Have we considered anything like that?
Yeah, I think the reason we haven't considered that is that hasn't really been the main, that was an issue for one family, but actually both of those siblings were in at the same age level. So, the chances of that, us rearranging all the studios that have siblings for that feels like too much to affect the consistency with the teachers and the families. So I think that would not be something that we would do at this time. But gosh, I guess if we were having to do over again, we might think about the children of staff, which studios they would be in. But again, I think that train has already left the station. But that is not something that we had thought about back in August, how that affects so many, is that we have a lot of staff with a lot of children. And so when that goes down, it does affect big parts of the building, which is great that we have a community of staff here that have their children at the school.
Another question about, do we foresee kiddos who are not in hybrid or FSP returning to campus at all this school year?
Those that aren't in hybrid or aren't in FSP have chosen not to be on campus. So I'm wondering if they're asking about like hybrid children in elementary and teens. So I'm going to answer that question because the first answer would be that those families chose not to be on campus for the whole year unless they change their enrollment. But I do hope that we have our hybrid kiddos back on campus this year. I do really hope that that happens. And, as of right now, with the numbers going down, hopefully that trend continues. And with the vaccinations, shots in arms going up, hopefully we'll be having that conversation sooner than later. Anything else? Good questions. Thank you all for the questions. I think those are really helpful.
Okay, Barbara, for families who are sending children to school while awaiting test results, which is a clear violation of policy, or who are ill, what steps are being taken with those families who would be violating the policies in place? It would be unfortunate to shut down again and affect many families for a few who didn't follow the rules.
Yeah. So for me to clarify, that was not the reason we shut down before for that reason. I was just stating on the first day back in January, we had several situations where that happened. I think we have to remember that the families that are in the most need sometimes have the least capacity and sometimes have the less knowledge about what's happening. And so, the first thing we do is educate and have those personal conversations. A lot of times it's just they didn't understand that. Most of the time it's because they thought that their child was supposed to be on campus and that came first. And so education is the way that we work through that. But that was not actually the reason why school had to close before. That was just because there was a lot of infection and there was 3 different people that all of a sudden got positive in different parts of the building. And we had to make a decision on that. Anything else from the group? All right. Well, Heather and one more just popped up maybe.
Yes. Will this year, seeing siblings at the same level being in different studios change how you place learners moving up for next school year? My kids are at the teen level, but it's an interesting thought that if families and advisors don't see an issue, that it could be easier to potentially group siblings.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that component. I think that, at this point, we usually give families the choice on whether they want siblings in the same studio or not. And Glenn, maybe you have a better knowledge than this, but I would say 90% of the time, families choose their siblings not to be in the same studio because they want to see them grow independently of each other. Is that fair, Glenn?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I'd say the majority is definitely different studios.
So I would hesitate to do something that would affect development for the chance of a very small chance that it would affect transmission. Since we are now in February and have had what we think is 0 transmission in the building, even with siblings in separate studios, it doesn't feel like to me there's enough evidence to even consider that for the downside of the developmental piece of that. Thanks for the question, though. I think that's it. We have to keep thinking of every single thing. Well, Heather and Preen and I will stick on for a minute if anyone has anything else. And we really appreciate you coming on today and being a part of this conversation. And we'll see you soon. Hopefully the 17th when we have our workshop. Take care. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, guys. We'll stay on if anyone has anything else. Just let us know.
Hey, Barbara, this is Melissa Wilson. How are you?
Hey, Melissa. Great.
Just wanted to say thank you for all you guys have done to help make it safe to bring our kids back. I know that for my kiddos, it is a really bright light to get them back in there. So thank you for that. And since we had a little lull here, I also wanted to ask, I wanted to bring some stuff for the food pantry. What are the drop-off hours?
Anytime.
Okay.
Yep. It's just open 24/7.
Perfect. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yes.
Take care.
How long does it take for the recording to be posted? Rob is wondering. He had to pop in late.
Hi, Rob. If you have any questions, let me know. Prina and I will get it out this afternoon, the email and the recording. Anybody have anything else? Whitney, did you have any follow-up questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.